Well, welcome back, everyone. It's just another day in the life as a military wife, and I have been kind of trying to keep track of the House of Representative hearings on the pullout of Afghanistan. And there has been some updates, some information, just things that I have come across that I feel you would find interesting or informative. So I want to share those with you today. As always, I'm your host, Sam Wolf, and you are listening to Life of a Military Wife. Okay, so I am going to try to record this episode with the cuteness in my lap, and the cuteness is what we are calling newest member of our family. That's the nickname that has settled upon little one, and we'll see how effective this is, or if I get too distracted because, well, right now cuteness is trying to eat their fist, which is so freaking adorable. Moving on, though, back to the House of Representative hearings on the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And what brought this to my attention initially was my husband found a article on Military Times that included a poll, and that poll was of military veterans and how they felt like about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. So to quote the initial article that was found directly, it says 37% of vets have a negative view of Afghanistan withdrawal. And the organization that put this poll together was Military Roll Call. I'd actually not heard of this. Oh, sorry, Mission Roll Call. That's what it's called. Yeah, again, human. Sometimes I make mistakes. Mission Roll Call, it was an organization I had not previously been familiar with. But what they had to say is that they were trying to get a sense of how the community felt about the withdrawal. And they travel across the country and through high veteran populated areas. And they got, I think, a relatively large percentage. I think it was somewhere near 70,000. Sorry, I apologize. No, it was, oh yeah, it was 5,500. I apologize for my misrepresentation of the numbers initially. But yeah, they polled 5,500 veterans. And like I said before, 73% did not, they weren't happy with the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And yeah, it that got me digging into this sort of stuff a little bit more because not long after my husband showed me this poll, I saw the article about the Marine veteran who was reporting to the House Foreign Affairs Committee on the hearings about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And honestly, I think this is about freaking time. This should have been looked into ages ago. I don't know why the last Congress didn't do this, or heck, the one before that. But, a little, it's late. Definitely late, but at least it's finally getting done. Um, but it goes down to say, and honestly, if you have not seen the video of this um, Marine and his testimony, it is just crushing. It is absolutely crushing. He talks about he's a Marine sniper. He was up on the tower at the airport in Kabul prior to the suicide bomber, just shortly before, and they spot the suicide bomber and they tried to get permission to take out the suicide bomber and they were told no over and over and over again, or they were just ignored. And then finally, a couple hours later, they were told to go down on street level and to help bring in some individuals into the airport who had been cleared. And it was during that process when the suicide bomber approached and set off his device. And this Marine veteran, the sniper, lost his arm due to shrapnel and was severely wounded. When he woke up, he had been thrown 12 feet, and there was just it was the he was overwhelmed by the trauma from the blast as well as just the Marines dead around him. And I just can, it was heartbreaking. It was literally heartbreaking. I can't even imagine what that would be like. Um, and, and to hear report after report in the military community, this has been talked about so much. And it was talked about from day one, how it was handled, how people felt about how it was handled. But at the same time, we talk about it amongst ourselves, but very rarely do we discuss this openly just because we're used to not discussing things like this openly for operational security reasons, and for different reasons in general. So the fact that these hearings are happening, I think it's a good thing. I think that there was obviously a breakdown in how this was handled, again, in my opinion. Um, but the veterans know what happened. Service members know what it was like in Afghanistan. They know what these locations were like. They know what the security resources and the US resources were on the ground. And the fact that this has just been kind of glossed over for so long has been aggravating to a lot of people. And I said this at the time, and I'm going to say it again. There was absolutely no reason that we were doing that withdrawal from the Kabul airport. We had a military installation not far away that was perfectly sufficient in doing the withdrawal. Why on earth we handed that over to the Taliban prior to the withdrawal to Kabul through the airport is absolutely ludicrous. To this day, I will never understand the rationale for that call. That rationale was just absolutely just ridiculous. And the other thing is, I was going through these articles and CNN, NBC, all of these, they were reporting on this. NBC, according to NBC, currently left behind, the estimated is 78,000 Afghan allies with special visas. And this is not to mention the service members' families and US citizens that are still trapped in the country, and some of which are being actively pursued by the Taliban, and their lives are in danger. I don't even know how many of them are still alive at this point. Yes, there are individuals, thank goodness, who have taken it upon themselves to get them out of the country because the State Department can't seem to be bothered and want to just forget that ever happened. So I'm just I there is a huge amount of loyalty in the military community, and the nobody left behind thing is not a joke to the military community. And so the fact that women and children who are family members of service members and US citizens, not to mention our allies, were left in the hands of the Taliban is absolutely outrageous. Okay, that's something I had to get off my chest. Been a little cranky about that for quite a bit. But in some of these articles, I was seeing references. They were saying, well, it was started by the Trump administration, so it was out of our hands, and this, that, and the other thing. And people are trying to say things like that. Yes, the initial withdrawal did start under the Trump administration. However, the Trump administration was previous administration was handling it differently. And honestly, withdrawal, no withdrawal, like the thing that gets my goat, and this you can actually go back to the CNN article from April 14th, 2021. And I'm going to pull up the article so that I am giving you an exact direct quote from this. And this is a quote from Biden and his administration. And basically, okay, the war in Afghanistan was never meant to be a multi-generational undertaking, is what he said in his thing. They announced that they were going to pull out by September 11th. the 20th anniversary of the attacks on the World Trade Center. Um, and he said that bin Laden is dead and Al Qaeda is degraded in Afghanistan, and it's time to end this war forever. And then he goes on to say, or at least it was stated, the deadline. This is what CNN said, direct quote from CNN. The deadline Biden has set is absolute, with no potential for extension based on worsening conditions on the ground. Are you freaking kidding me? Seriously? That was an absolute mistake. And that was April 14th of 2021. That was several months before we lost 13 service members because of a botched withdrawal from a civilian city. So, under the previous administration, prior administration, they had to meet certain qualifications. If they did not meet those qualifications, we were not going to follow the set upon or set out withdrawal timeline. There were going to be consequences. So the fact that this was stated that, nah, we're pulling out regardless, we're going to be out, what kind of message does that send? Yeah, basically, you can do whatever you want. And that's what happened. And the breakdown of just organization, communication, everything was ridiculous. The people that were trapped, the horror stories, the countless horror stories I've heard of people with just having a flight to the airport with nothing but the clothes on their backs and their passports, just leaving everything, absolutely everything behind. I'm aware of multiple families, like directly aware of multiple families that had to flee with just the clothes on their backs, literally, and came to the United States seeking asylum because their lives were in danger with their wives and children in tow, with absolutely no belongings. And thank goodness the military community, like I said, we're super loyal. And I'm this military community has stepped up and helped a lot of these people. A lot of church organizations and other organizations have stepped up and helped these families, but there were way too many left behind. And the Taliban, we were kept we, the news, they kept saying, "Oh, they're not going to take over. Oh, they're not going to take over. The government's not going to fall apart." What the heck? The government fell apart before we even left the country. Like, we had not cleared the Kabul airport before the Afghanistan democratically elected government collapsed. So it's about freaking time. It is about time that there was some serious digging into this situation. By the way, Cuteness has now fallen asleep after trying to eat her hand multiple times. Um, anyway, so I'm really glad this hearing is happening. I don't understand why it took so long for this hearing to happen. I'm really grateful for the Military Times article, which kind of brought it all to my attention, and kind of want to pivot a little bit on this just just the subject. But another poll that they did that caught my attention, and part of the reason is I just felt like it was interesting. It was saying that basically post Afghanistan war, did service members feel like they were um okay, I don't want to misquote this. I really hate misquoting things, and so I apologize that I'm slowing down to make sure I'm pulling up with okay. Yeah, because they do polls on a lot of things. Anyway, Okay, here it is. This is the exact phrasing. In 2022, the MRC conducted a national research poll in which 45% of Americans say that they have donated to veteran organizations, 20% said they have volunteered for one, and 26% said they have advocated for veterans' issues to their elected representatives in Congress. After the United States exit from Afghanistan, do you think veterans' issues have become less of a priority for the American public? And it was 25% yes, or sorry, 75% yes, 25% no. So 75% felt like their priorities were less important to the public. And there really was a huge betrayal in the way that the Afghanistan situation went down. And not only did the Afghanistan situation go down that way, but then it's been just ignored for year plus. Like people talked about it for a while, but until these hearings started happening, people weren't talking about it outside of the military community. People had just, moved on. And I hate to say it, but we haven't. We have not forgotten those that were left behind. And it is still something that actively concerns the military community. And then to turn around and to be expected to go in and at the very last minute notice ship tons of service members over to Europe to just sit there in case Ukraine got out of hand. And these service members were not provided adequate food, adequate housing. Their families were, the pay was all messed up. Like it just ridiculous. And so insult was compounded with injury. And it's just been a complete fiasco. So, like I said, I'm really glad the House of Representatives is finally getting around to this. Um, Again, I don't understand why they couldn't have done it sooner, but better late than never. Maybe, I don't know, maybe. But basically, it comes down to, and I'm going to quote, um, and I want to make sure again I'm saying this right, but it is Chairman Mike McCall from Texas of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And he states, and I quote, again, I'm trying to be very accurate on the information. Yes, I've thrown in my opinion, but I want to be precise that what happened in Afghanistan was a systematic breakdown of the federal government at every level and a stunning failure of leadership by the Biden administration. And this, again, quoting him, this was an abdication of the most basic duties of the United States government to protect Americans and leave no one behind. And that is pretty much what it comes down to. And I just, honestly, there are days I wish I could just go and get people out myself, but well, you all know you all know how my last year has been. So that's not been a possibility. Anyway, I wouldn't have the skills. Wish I did, but I don't. But basically, what it comes down to is that this needs to be talked about. This needs to be brought up. Political, when constituents show that something is of political importance to them, to their Congress people, that is when action can and does often take place. They really are a little more concerned with what we think than we sometimes think they are. So, honestly, if you feel so inclined, get a hold of your representative and let them know that you are following this and that you care. If you do, maybe you don't, but if you do. And just to wrap it up, I really want to give a huge shout out to Mission Roll Call. I am absolutely impressed with their coverage of these topics, as well as the questions and just fact finding they're trying to do with the veteran community. The fact that they actually care what the military community thinks and feels about different situations is really refreshing because I personally feel that quite often our opinions and perspectives get largely ignored. And that's kind of why I have this podcast is to help people understand the military perspective, what we go through in our life, what we're concerned about, just different things like that. And also to help military families, people who are new to the military community, navigate this life because it is a huge lifestyle change and it is a culture shock. And so, if anything I do is helpful to the greater military community at large or to the general civilian population in understanding the needs and perspectives of the military community, then I feel like I've succeeded. That all said, I've got the cuteness that I need to get to bed because I didn't get this recorded earlier today because cuteness felt like napping was optional. So I will wrap that up for this week. I am your host, Sam Wolf, and you've been listening to Life of a Military Wife.